definitely see how having that skin tighter than it's supposed to be, I think, causes issues that a lot of people aren't aware of, or they think it's normal.
Yeah.
And there's other injuries too. I mean, skin tearing is a big one.
Yeah.
That I've experienced myself.
Okay. So when you skin tear, does it usually happen like in the inner mucosa area?
Yes.
Okay, makes sense. Because that skin is supposedly thinner than like your shaft skin, right? No.
Yeah.
You were also saying something about skin bridges. That you've had a skin bridge, or?
Yeah, and that's related. When the inner skin tears because it's so tight and has more friction than it's supposed to, that then turns into a skin bridge because it when it tries to heal, it will over sort of connect itself.
Yeah.
That's just the way that skin kind of heals, especially if the tear is big enough.
Just what we need is more scar tissue, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and of course scar tissue mainly transmits pain and is less flexible and more the nerves get into these knots basically because they're trying to reconnect and then they can't, and so they just knot up and transmit pain signals. And it causes a lot of issues for guys who try to restore their foreskins too, and makes it really difficult or impossible for a lot of guys I've talked to because they get tearing of the skin.
Yeah.
And then...
especially if they try too hard.
Yeah.
Try to go too fast. And Jay even talks about that in his book, the Circumcision Scar book, about how he had to be careful and sometimes he'd do too much when he's trying to restore. And he ended up hurting himself, and then he had to stop trying to restore for a while until he healed up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty annoying. So it also causes I think the pain it can become really evident during sex sometimes. And interestingly too, I've noticed for myself as I'm restoring, I think this skin actually gets more sensitive, which is a problem because there's not enough skin to accommodate, and so then there's all this pressure on the skin which is becoming more sensitive and actually causes more pain during the restoration process when you have sex sometimes. So that tight skin can be painful, but and I think that's any guy who has tight skin can have tight erections and can have pain from that.
Yeah.
Depending on how sensitive you are, it can be pretty bad. But if you are restoring, that can also increase sensitivity and then make it worse. Again, just in the process of restoring it can be really difficult. And I've had that from the skin becoming more sensitive, and then still being too tight, and then because when the skin is covered, of course, it resensitizes, but
yeah,
it doesn't have enough skin for quite a while to actually accommodate the full erection. Yeah, there's so many things. It's hard to express it all to people because there's just so many different things that people aren't really aware of.
Yeah. I mean, even myself, I didn't really think about the details about my own penis until all this whole subject came up about circumcising my first son, Jackson, and I didn't understand anything about like the frenulum being like the sweetest spot of all, and the ridge band. Well, of course I'll never know what the ridge band feels like, but or the frenulum delta, all that whole area is supposed to be like the most exquisite spot. And sure enough, I mean, it is. Because I got cut, I'm pretty sure, with the Mogen Clamp, so I still have my frenulum area. Because I don't have the part of the frenulum that draws my foreskin back up anymore. They had to snip that so my inner mucosa would stay down on my shaft. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to understand the details better, understand why things work the way they work down there. And the more that you learn, the more you hate that you're being cut.
Devastating to learn about the frenulum and the frenular delta and the ridged band, because it's very unique and a special part of the way that human beings are designed. And it really makes sense that circumcision, I think, is done to prevent self-stimulation, because if you look at it, the way that the foreskin is designed, it's really special in that way, and different than even other primates. Don't really have the same innervation in the foreskin. It's more in the glands, actually. But human beings are very special, and it's an especially human feature that our foreskins are so nerve-rich and so packed with nerve endings. It's just a special aspect of human beings that seem to have evolved from primates really, really rapidly. And so it's kind of you might think it's a mystery of why humans have such special foreskins that are such a primary part of pleasure. But I think it makes sense, because the way that we manipulate our penis with our hands really allows you to do a lot with the foreskin, and the way that humans are such sexual beings and really have sex for pleasure. I think the foreskin is specially made for human pleasure, and so it's to learn that the most fundamental part of being a human being, having a sexual experience, is taken from you, and that you're not able to experience that or even conceptualize or really know, because you don't have anything else like that on your body. It's pretty frustrating.
Just another way that humans are the luckiest mammal on the planet.
Yeah.
At the same time, we harm each other. So have you had any of these experiences I talked about with the pelvic floor, or the scrotum being drawn up, or anything like that?
Not so much. Of course, I've been restoring for 8 years now, so...
8? Wow, I didn't know that long.
Yeah. We have 8 years this December. And so it really helps with a lot of the issues caused by tightness.
Yeah.
But before I started, the main thing for me was just that, I really had to stimulate using lube, because if I didn't, then if I tried to move the skin at all, then it would immediately pull up a lot of scrotal skin.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't an option to move the skin back and forth, and I always thought it was almost comical when I'd be with a female partner and she'd try to stroke my skin back and forth, and I'd think, oh, that poor woman doesn't know how a penis works.
Yeah, I know.
Whereas it wasn't that she doesn't know how a penis works. It's obvious how a penis should work. Yeah, you stroke the skin back and forth,
Yeah.
and that's That's the way we're made, and that's the instinct.
I've heard some guys talk about the flip-flop, as teaching women that are used to, preputially amputated men, circumcised men, and have to teach them, well, you can actually, you actually move the skin. It's loose. The skin is detached. It's not attached to the underlying musculature like almost all the rest of our skin is on our body for a reason. All right.
Yeah, that's another huge problem with sex in the West, where a majority of men are circumcised. Is that I think a reason that we have such a high circumcision rate in adults compared to other places is partly because of the social pressure, which, by the way, it's still not that high. I mean, vast majority of men still decide to keep their foreskins, even in the United States. But the ones that do, I think, part of the reason is because they're made fun of or they feel odd, and also because women and sexual partners don't know how to pleasure an intact penis. They don't know. They're not used to treating a foreskin the way that it's supposed to be treated, and they're too rough with the penis, and they do things. They treat the penis as though it was circumcised because that's what they're used to, and so I think it's causes men to not appreciate their foreskins they would in a culture where women know how to, and men who have male partners know how to pleasure the penis the way it's supposed to be pleasured. So I always wonder how that affects.
It's kind of funny because you hear all the time from women, men don't know how to pleasure a woman. It's like, well, teach us. We don't know how that part works down there.
Right.
So it's we just learn to talk to each other more. Maybe if sex ed included more about the how things move and how things feel, what's sensitive and what's sensitive to what. You got sensitive to pressure, you have sensitive to light touch. If we talked about that stuff more, then maybe we could have better relationships. But we're still dealing with the Victorian era where we're not supposed to talk about sex and all that, and then we end up not being able to pleasure each other properly.
Oh yeah, definitely. Talking is my expertise, specialty, and I always do wonder though if intact men. I really want to do a study on this. If men who grow up with their penis the way it's supposed to be actually have a mechanism built in that they learn how to pleasure a woman from the fact that their genitals are somewhat analogous to a woman's, because the foreskin is very sensitive and has many similar nerve endings to the clitoris, that if they grow up with that and experiencing that and learning to pleasure themselves, if that would actually mean that men who are intact are naturally more able to understand what a woman has and understand how to pleasure that. I've always been curious if there's a big difference, especially when young people are kind of starting out with no experience.
Yeah. I've been looking around for men that I'm pretty sure I talked to at least one before, but it was just online and social media. Because for me, it's not this way anymore since I'm 50 years old and things are stretched out down there just to gravity and all, just like women's boobs, drop. But it used to be that when I get an erection, frequently powerful one, my scrotum would be pulled so much up my shaft that my testes would pull up into my body so much that it would pull my testes up into my body cavity, and it'd almost be like someone was just barely squeezing my testes, my balls, just enough where it hurts a little bit. Just I just like to get kicked in the balls, right? It's almost like that, and that's if I were to rate the parts about how I'm harmed because I'm cut, that would be my number 2. The number one, of course, being the lack of lubrication from the foreskin, covering the gland.
Right.
But the fact that my testes were drawn up during sex or masturbation, and I'd have to stop. Oh man, this is.
Yeah, yeah, that's really shitty. I guess I have had some of that experience, and I think that's actually one thing that has probably also decreased, because I don't notice that as much anymore. But I used to notice it a lot more. That, especially when I'm in certain positions, that my balls would kind of be drawn up inside me, and yeah, it's unpleasant. It's not the way it's supposed to be. I was wondered if that was supposed to happen. It seemed like it was kind of odd and unpleasant that you're because when the skin's tight, it pulls up the testicles, and it's not supposed to be that tight. It's painful.